Well, that was Morley. Morley has brought her blend of jazz, folk, and soul to the world stage from Carnegie Hall to the Nomad Women's Festival. Now, our next speaker is going to be Dr. Ingrid Mattson. She is a Muslim religious leader, a scholar of Islamic Studies, and an expert in interfaith relations. Since 2012, she has held the London and Windsor Community Chair in Islamic Studies at Huron University College at Western University. She is a senior fellow of the Royal Al Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought in Amman, Jordan. And she will be followed by a wonderful performer, Carolina Moraes Fonseca, who dances in a variety of Dakini female-centric forms designed for both empowerment and spiritual liberation. Please welcome Dr. Ingrid Mattson.
Thank you. It is an honor and a blessing to be here with you tonight. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the Quran, the existence of human diversity is described as purposeful and beneficial. And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your languages and colors. In this are signs for those who seek knowledge. Biological and cultural differences are signs from God. Those who want to know more about reality will follow the signs and can learn much about the physical and cultural development of humanity over millennia, that it is a fundamental aspect of our nature to migrate, seeking out greater safety or opportunities, that our different experiences and perspectives are reflected in the different symbols and structures of our diverse languages, while at the same time, we have a shared fundamental capacity for language. We learn that we are the same, and we learn that we are different. And God says in the Quran, "O people, behold, we have created you out of a male and a female, and have made you into nations and tribes so that you might come to know one another." The very purpose of our differences is to allow us to know one another. This, at the surface, seems counterintuitive or redundant. Don't differences create a gap between us so that we have misunderstanding? Or if we didn't have any differences, then we wouldn't need to try to get to know one another. This very purpose of our differences being allowed to allow us to know one another. The reality of the human state is that we cannot know even ourselves without the other. When each of us left our homes or our hotel rooms today, we surely took a quick glance in the mirror to see how we looked, to see if we had buttoned up our shirts correctly, to see if we had a random thread or lint on our sweater, to see if our hijab or our turban or our hairstyle was sitting just right. We needed to look outside ourselves to see ourselves. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The believer is a mirror to another believer." When we look at the other, we see who we are by their reaction to us. Am I acting arrogantly? Look at the slight frown forming on the other's brow. Am I monopolizing the conversation? Look at the way the other's eyes are glazing over. Is my assumption that my harsh judgment of a certain person is obvious and shared by all, in fact, incorrect? Look at the way the other has crossed her arms and pursed her lips. Without the other reflecting back to us, we are mostly ignorant about ourselves. We do not notice the limitations of our perspectives. We are in denial about our selfishness. We have a very limited understanding. And this is why God has given us friends and family and colleagues, therapists and counselors, spiritual guides and teachers, our children, for sure, who notice our hypocrisy quite quickly, and our students to give us advice and to support our growth. This is true for religious communities as it is for individuals. A healthy and sound religious community will seek engagement not only for the common good, but to reflect back to them the reality of their presence in society, where it is doing well and where it is falling short. Without this engagement, we are collectively deluded about our impact on the world and fall short of understanding where our actions and statements and our overall presence in a community is having the effect we intended. There is no naive encounter with the other. As individuals, we are born and develop in particular contexts which shape all subsequent encounters. The psychological processes of transference and countertransference are well known, as are projection and trauma, personal and intergenerational. And as communities, we are shaped by our histories, which include narratives of the other, and our exegetical and oral traditions which categorize, define, and diminish the other. Even a good intention does not magically make implicit biases disappear. So we must begin from a position of humility, with the explicit recognition that even if one believes as I do, that all humans are born spiritually sound and whole, that nevertheless we are born in history, with all its conflicts and resentments swirling around us, and we are often taught to accept, to distrust, and dislike certain kinds of people. We must admit that we have numerous cognitive biases and barriers to understanding others, much less to accepting them and loving them. We are in a state of complex ignorance, and it can be a lifelong struggle to deconstruct what has been embedded in us. As we admit this about ourselves, we must also know that it is true of others, and we should be compassionate to ourselves and to others as we undertake this struggle. We have to be reasonable in our expectations about how well we can truly understand each other, but we have to try. And a necessary condition for understanding is knowledge of these cognitive and moral epistemic biases, such as motivated reasoning, anchoring, in-group preference, and just world bias. We have to understand how conspiracy theories can spread so easily and embed themselves so deeply in our minds. And we have to have sympathy for ourselves and others who are misled by such biases. But we do no one a favor by leaving them intact. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Help your brother when he is being oppressed or causing oppression." And his companion said, how do we help our brother if he is the oppressor? And the Prophet Muhammad said, by stopping him. It is not comfortable, natural, or right to be in a constant state of fear and hatred. And certainly this is not the state our religious traditions are intended to produce. And there also are negative forces, whatever we call them, that operate in our reality. We have to be realistic and know that not everyone wants us to understand each other, much less respect and befriend one another. Some are ideologically committed to polemics. Others are more strategic, convinced that they have to use various tactics and strategies to attack the other in a more subtle way. For militant ideologues, peace is not a goal. Rather, peace creates an existential void, and they find their deepest personal meaning and identity by engaging in violence, sanctified by religion or nationalism. We are only recently starting to understand the tactics of those who actively seek to divide us through the manipulation of social media to spread false information about each other, to foment discord, and to create echo chambers. There are organized forces drawing upon the most current knowledge of social psychology to divide us. Cambridge Analytica was not the first and will not be the last to leverage this knowledge to deliberately foment discord, chaos, and hatred among people. And when we are afraid, we forget our ethics. We are willing to do anything necessary to ensure our safety and the safety of those we love. I believe that it is not religion, rather it is fear that is the greatest source of irrational violence in the world today. Now, this is not to say that fear has no positive role in human behavior. There are things and people that are dangerous, and fear can be an important signal to pay attention, but it is easily manipulated, and we are being manipulated. But we cannot counter fear with slogans, just by saying, we should just love each other. Of course we should love each other. But how do we deal with this state, this manipulated state? Sometimes our language makes people dismiss us as unrealistic. So we need to weave into our moral education what we know about our ability to assess risks, that it is flawed, and how these flaws can be leveraged to generate hate and division, and what we can do to counter these things. People can be diverted and distracted from moving forward by loud and disturbing events. They become frozen with fear or fascination and stop moving completely. The role of the leader is to put the distraction into perspective and draw people's attention back to the path. An Arabic proverb says, "The dogs bark, but the caravan moves on." In these situations, our role is to remind people to give proper attention to threats, but not to become paralyzed by them. In concrete terms, this often means paying less attention to a social media troll or the latest loud-mouthed, self-styled expert on the news, and more to one's own spiritual and educational goals, the needs of one's family and community building. It is never possible simply by our own efforts to have a truly fresh start in human relationships and societies. Anything new we create is made from what already exists, and what is new cannot be placed outside of this world in a space untouched by history. Only by the grace of God can something truly new come into being. His command when he desires a thing is to say, "Be," and it is. His grace does not depend on our actions, yet God created us as beings who must act so that we can grow. Blessed is he in whose hands is the kingdom, and he has power over all things, who created death and life that he might try you in the best of works. It is God's command that a people will not improve unless they make an effort to change themselves. Directing our will towards actions we believe will be pleasing to the divine, we trust that the Creator can bring about a dramatic change in our habits and patterns of behavior and in the world in which we live. Our instincts in human relations are often pessimistic. We feel stuck in our histories and the emotions which arise out of our histories. But believing in God's creative power, we have faith, as the Quran says, it may be that God will create love between you and those whom you now consider enemies. God knows reality, whereas we only have perspectives, considering the other, not knowing the reality of the other. God can and does create love where now discord and hatred exist. But to end, as the great medieval sage of Islam, Ibn Ata'illah, said, "How can the laws of nature be ruptured for you so that miracles result, while you, for your part, have yet to rupture your bad habits?" Let us work together to break those bad habits and see the miracles flow forth.